Welcome back to That's a Food Job, the show where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm Veronica, and today we're doing something a little bit different. Normally, we have a nice interview podcast where I speak with my guests and learn about their food job, but today instead we're bringing you highlights from the Brampton Food and Beverage Processing Summit that Nicole and I attended this September. It is a summit that's meant to encourage discussion within the food and beverage processing industry and to learn about how the sector is growing, how it's innovating, and where it's going. And of course, it's specifically talking about the city of Brampton and how they're growing, but we're going to be talking about more than the city of Brampton today. And I assure you, don't turn off this episode, even if you don't live in Brampton or plan to. We're still going to give you some great insights that you can apply to your career. And it's going to give us like a thinking, talking piece. And we're going to hear from some really, really cool individuals that attended. So today I'm joined with, of course, a voice you've heard before, Nicole Gallace from FoodGrads. So, hey, Nicole, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Well, it was an easy person to choose when you were at the event with me. So hopefully this episode is going to be a good conversation for those listening to learn not only about what the city of Brampton's doing, but, take the insights from the guests that were there and apply it to their career. I mean, that's what the podcast is here for.
Yeah, sounds good. Take it away.
Okay, well, I'm actually not going to take it away. I'm actually going to leave it to our first conversation piece that we're going to hear. Let's listen to the conversation and hear some insights about what's happening in the city of Brampton.
My name is Martin Bohl, and I am the sector manager for food processing and medtech. So spend a lot of my time meeting with companies in the food and beverage sector in Brampton, understanding their pain points, their needs. Also do a lot of marketing at trade shows. And then, of course, for the last 3 years, my team and I have been heavily involved with Mayor Patrick Brown and the council on hosting what's called an annual food summit. And that really just gives us a chance to interact with companies, have them an opportunity to network as well, and to bring service providers and programs together to learn about the issues of the day.
Well, you definitely did that during the event. It was wonderful, and it was great to see so many walks of life at the sector. You had the support, you had the actual food processors, the decision makers, the policy makers. There were so many different individuals there, and honestly, it was great. And from your perspective, why do you think that it's important that we even have these events, and especially in Brampton? What did you hope to get out of the event, and did you achieve that now that we're in the post side of it?
The annual food summit started 3 years ago with about 40 companies coming together in Brampton to talk about labor and workforce development issues. And that really came out of several meetings that I have had with the food industry in Brampton. And by the way, in Brampton, we have one of the largest food and beverage processing manufacturing clusters in Canada. We have about 300 companies working together, not only processing, there's regulatory, there's distribution, and there's research. It really has become not only a Brampton event, so we had the Ontario government participating, we had colleges and universities, we had the federal government, we had service providers from not only Brampton, but from, I would say, the greater Toronto area participating. We had colleagues from Hamilton, from Caledonia, from Caledon, from Brantford. This is all an effort to raise the awareness of the importance of manufacturing in the food and industry cluster. And so this is really what we want to continue, is to focus on how can we bring everyone together to build this cluster, to provide jobs, not only in Brampton, but in the sector, and also for an opportunity for agriculture to find a market for processing those raw products and materials. And then, of course, as we know, we had Alain from Loblaw on our panel, a very important retail component in not only the city of Brampton, but in Canada. So in summary, this has grown to an awareness where even when I go out to other events in Ontario, I'm always talking about the opportunity to partner with us. We have talent, we have land availability, we have an aggressive planning and support group at the city to help expedite planning and approvals. And again, ultimately, it provides jobs for Bramptonians. And that's really ultimately what we're about in economic development.
Wonderful. Well, you mentioned at the very end talking about the people who are actually living in Brampton, because that is in part a big portion about who you're supporting. So one thing about Brampton is it has a very diverse population, which I know is its strength. But would you be able to speak a little bit more about that? And how do you see that diversity strengthening the food and beverage industry, especially when it comes to building its workforce?
I have met with many companies in Brampton, and I always ask the question, how can we help you grow in Brampton? How can you expand? And the one comment that always comes back from companies is the availability of talent. And not only the availability of talent in general, but it's a very highly educated workforce. Brampton gets about 14,000 new Canadians every year, and it's a very diverse, young, talented, educated workforce, ready, willing, and able to work. So a lot of those jobs then lead to opportunities to become more ingrained not only in the community, but also to provide learning and development opportunities to move up into a company. So maybe someone starts on the packing line, they move into a position of quality and supervisor, for example. There are many companies that offer work training pathways. Companies like Cardinal Meats is fantastic, Maple Lodge Farms, Maple Leaf Foods, all of these brand names that people might be aware of. But we also have an innovation district where we have some very unique technology opportunities in companies. For example, Bluelicity, which offers the traceability technology incubated at the Brampton Venture Zone, one of our incubation companies. And then we have the three colleges and universities, Algoma, Sheridan, and now Toronto Metropolitan University, more on the medical side, that provide training and development not only for science, but business degrees. I would also say that if you get started in the food industry, you have an opportunity to branch out into Brampton's distribution and logistics and trucking industries, which is one of the largest industries in Peel region and in fact in Southern Ontario. So there's many, I would say, from a workforce development perspective, Veronica, that you're working on, there's opportunities to start in the food industry and then expand into ancillary industries that support food manufacturing.
Wow, it's great to hear that it's this coming together and collaboration of not just the city, not just employers, and not just education. It's everyone is working together for this goal to strengthen the Canadian economy, strengthen Brampton's economy, and really create a nation of people that are, proud to work here, or, competitive with their skills. And it's really great to hear how everyone is coming together with that. And being a podcast that's more so focused on like students and new graduates, I might have missed it, but I was curious about from the city's perspective, how are you helping to support students, new Canadians, new professionals as they start to explore and grow their careers within the food and beverage manufacturing? Because for some, it's totally new. Some go to school, plan to do it, but others, it's fairly new. So how is the city helping to support that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Veronica. And as I mentioned, we do have a lot of new Canadians that come into the city. So one of the major connections that they have is obviously through our councils. So Councillor Tour, Councillor Singh, and others, Brampton's mayor. These councils and these council members are connected to their community. And so they might be at a community event, they might hear about opportunities and issues for students, for new Canadians. It's often referred to us in economic development because we have a very broad view of not only the city, but also of workforce. And then we would take that question and say, somebody is interested in learning about the immigration process. Well, we have connections at Immigration Canada, the federal government. We have connections, for example, at Sheridan College, where we connect them to career counselors. And we have connections, for example, to Brampton Board of Trade. We have spent the last 2 or 3 years working very closely with the Brampton Board of Trade, and there will be a 2-day conference coming up on workforce development on November 2nd and 3rd, I believe, in Brampton, to bring, again, the stakeholders together that provide career counseling services, immigration services, college, university, bring all of those people together, invite students. We also have a very active Brampton Entrepreneurship Center called BEC. Uh, Several times a year, we hold through BEC, we hold hackathons. That goes directly into high schools in Brampton. So that's a very broad focus on technology, but technology is also used in the food industry, of course. And so through these opportunities, we're connected through uh, many city departments, I would say, as well as all of our connections, not only myself, but staff and economic development with colleges and universities, as well as the Brampton Board of Trade. So just a shout out to Brampton Board of Trade, again, this conference that's coming up in early November. People will want to look at that. It's a 2-day event focused very much on advanced skills training, not only in the food industry, but in advanced manufacturing. So in summary, skills development, workforce development, we've been doing this for at least 3 years in the city as a primary focus of helping our companies stay competitive and become competitive, and to offer some really great jobs to our students in the city.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that, Martin. I think that it's so wonderful that it's not just a job for someone to go to, but it's also helping to build up your
Yes,
community, to see the people
absolutely.
that you're there with. That's wonderful. And I have to go to the point that you talked about upskilling, and you know, a lot of people are noticing that the industry is evolving. There's a lot more automation. There's more sustainability. What skills or, let's say, opportunities do you believe will help define the next generation of food and beverage careers in Brampton?
I think it's all about advanced skills like robotics and artificial intelligence. Now, we did hear about those topics at the conference, at the summit, and I would say that at Sheridan, for example, we have a center of excellence that works on developing student capabilities in robotics and artificial intelligence. We also have the Rogers Cybersecurity Center in the city that works on training students and others who want to get into the field of cyber. So I think those areas, anything that removes unnecessary tasks from handling by humans, moving it into a processing and automation area. And again, we have colleges and universities that will do pilot studies that will provide you with a 2 or 3 year education opportunity, which will provide you with co-ops. Again, these are the connections that we make, and these are the questions that companies are asking about all the time. Again, the key opportunity is how can I find and keep my talents in Brampton? Most companies do that, and they find that's why they're expanding rapidly in Brampton. We haven't been busier in many, many years in business retention expansion in the food industry. And the large part of that is the talent. The other one is the expedited planning process that we offer, trying to get rid of red tape as companies expand. And then the connections, obviously, to your market through all the logistics opportunities, warehousing, trucking companies, all of that already exists in Brampton. And you can reach all of your global markets from Brampton. So that essentially, if students come into that environment and they feel supported, they will be successful.
Wow, that is a great answer. And it really goes to show that it's a forward-thinking city, both from the education side, the city side, just everyone coming together, thinking, planning for the future. And that does bring me to the end of just what I wanted to ask you today. But coming back to the conference itself, do we see plans for the future? A next annual event, of a fourth one? What do we see
Yes,
coming on the
yes. Thanks for
horizon?
that question, Veronica. We have sent out a survey to all participants. We are slowly getting the responses back, and I would think, not having looked at all the details, but we will be planning for another event next year. We'll see what kind of topics we might want to address, but we do want to hear through this podcast to yourself and others, what are the issues that you're hearing and you would like to be uh, a focal point next year. We're very open. As I mentioned, we're always reaching out to companies, so that will inform what the conference might look like next year or the summit. Um, it might really only focus on a technology aspect, for example, or it might work on workforce development. Let's work on developing our skills more in a workshop setting. But definitely, we will have another summit next year. We look forward to that. And we're also looking for client feedback and sector-wide engagement on what people might want to see next year. So thank you for that question, and thank you for the support for coming out to Brampton and being part of our summit this year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Martin, for sitting down with me and sharing about all the amazing things that the city of Brampton is doing, not just to help employers, but also help, the workforce, students, new professionals. And I'm looking forward to seeing what is on the horizon for the next summit. So thanks for sitting down with me.
Thanks very much, Veronica. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Wow, there was a lot that Martin said in that clip, not only about what actually happened at the summer, but as well as the involvement of Brampton with the city. So I think that there's two parts to how we can talk, Nicole. So let's first talk about the event. Like, what did you think about it?
Well, first and foremost, Martin has always been such a great supporter of Careers Now and FoodGrads in general. His intention to support students and grads and help people see their path in food and beverage processing is amazing. I mean, that we need the support. It takes a village, and he's like a master connector in terms of all the people that he knows and who he can bring together. I was thrilled that you were able to be at the conference doing the podcast live, having that opportunity. I know we met, we saw Martin at the Steam Whistle Food and Beverage Ontario conference, and you were doing it there, and he said, this is great, and we'd love you to come and do this at the Brampton Summit, which we were thrilled that the FoodGrads podcast was invited in any case to come and do that and speak to various individuals at the summit. The summit itself was awesome, well run. I would have liked it to be a full day if it could have been. I just think there was so much more opportunity to network and speak to people. We know lots of people through LinkedIn and other ways, and sometimes it's challenging to know who they are in the room. And you've spoken and you've met in other ways and other forums. Yeah, it's nice to see people in real life again, and there's more of that happening. And it's so needed. I think as technology advances, we want those in-person events more than ever. And so I would have liked a little bit more of that personally, those opportunities to network, because there was a pretty tight schedule.
Yeah, it was.
Having great speakers, but they were, back to back. So that would be my only comment. That I would have liked it to be in a full day, but it was awesome. There were so many great people in the room, organizations, Give and Go, Ital Pasta. So we got to see friends that, we've known for a long time and have supported the Careers Now program as well as FoodGrads. So it was a wonderful event.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so grateful to them come to us to say, would you like to participate and actually record live? This is, I think, my third time doing it, and I think I'm getting better at it. But just being in a room with so many people that are like decision makers, it's kind of a bit starstruck. I know that's a really weird thing to say, but you just realize like these are the people that are making a lot of the decisions in the food and beverage industry. And it was nice hearing about the different keynotes. So you had everything from, Mayor Patrick Brown to Minister Bacchini to Maple Lodge. Was it Maple Lodge or Maple Leaf?
Maple Lodge Farms.
Yes.
As well. And Maple Leaf.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There were both.
Yeah.
So like hearing about how they see the shift, and even I guess I've been involved in the industry for a bit, and like seeing what the discussion points has been shifting over time. But one of the things that really it was a really good learning thing for me was just seeing like a city's involvement with the sector in the industry. I feel when we talk about the food and beverage industry, even being a part of the Careers Now team, being part of Food and Beverage Ontario, you hear about the associations and you kind of think that it's like everyone coming together that are just from companies. But this event really puts into perspective that there's like the food industry is even more interconnected. You have the city perspective helping to help. Then you have the education and like educational institutions, and then you have the support industries like the automation industry. Like there's just so many people involved in this industry, and it really goes to show like even long term you could pivot within the industry depending, as long as you keep food central.
You need the city and that broader infrastructure to support a sector. especially something as important as food and beverage. And as Martin said, Brampton is the hub. I remember a few years back visiting Maple Lodge Farms, and they were at that time, their location, they needed a bus stop, to be near the facility. You have to think of these things when you're hiring, hundreds of people, and you're growing. How do people get there? Not everybody has a car. Not everybody has a driving license. How can you make it accessible for all the talent that, you could be hiring, but for something like that, you might not think of. So it's simple things like that. So Maple Lodge Farms were able to work with the city and get a bus, a spot on the bus route, those types of things. So that as a recruiter, supporting companies, you can say to somebody that perhaps says, I'd love to work for this organization. The only issue is I don't have a car. I'm just starting out, or new to Canada. I don't have my license yet. Any of those scenarios. And you can say, it's okay, there's public transport there. I mean, that's a huge win for the company, but for individuals as well that otherwise couldn't join a great organization like Maple Lodge. So that's just one example that the city, it's great that they get involved.
Yeah. And then another thing that also I learned is that there's also training opportunities that I think a lot of, like myself as a student, I would first go to my local like TMU. I'm at TMU, so they have an education support center or skills development. But this put into perspective that you can also go to your city. Like there's a lot of city support, for newcomers, for students, that you might be able to get training through them. So it's definitely a good resource to check out. And it seems like the city of Brampton is definitely doing that.
Yeah, well, with someone like Martin at the helm, who understands the different programs that are out there and then actually makes those connections and understands, for example, like Careers Now, a government-funded initiative through Food and Beverage Ontario. He comes to the events. He will make the time and come to the events that Food and Beverage is putting on, or Careers Now is hosting. So, he understands the program and what the program delivers, so then he can bring that back to people within the Brampton area. And as he mentioned, it's such a hub. I mean, 8,500 people and growing that are employed in Brampton, over 300 employers and growing. So, to understand the different programs that are available and bring those resources back, I think is really important. It's so proactive. And it helps, as I say, I sound like a broken record, but I say this constantly. It definitely takes a village to do what we're trying to do. You've been in this space for a long time. Food and beverage processing or manufacturing is not top of mind for a lot of young people as they're navigating through the school system, and then them starting to make decisions about what program to take at university or college. If they go that route, maybe they leave right out of school, and where can they work, what can they do after school. And so to be able to bring the conversation of food and beverage processing and highlight the wealth of industry we have, and in the different sectors, as you mentioned, regulatory, the processes themselves, distribution, there are so many different avenues, and to be able to point people in that direction. I think for the younger generation, one of the main things I always say is, you don't have to do it forever. This is a wonderful entry point, and then you can zig and zag and obviously listen to previous podcast episodes and find out how people have navigated their career. Every story is different. So yeah, I mean, it's great. And as I say, just sort of to summarize, Martin's been an amazing supporter. He shares all our podcast episodes. He likes them all. He shares it with his own network, which is awesome. So.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue for myself to talk about the keynote speaker that spoke. So, a lot of it was focused on obviously the city of Brampton and how they're supporting the different food and beverage industries. How they're supporting the food and beverage industry as a whole. But a lot of the event was actually for the processors to think about it in like the global scale. And that's kind of where the keynote speaker came in, and I got the opportunity to speak with them. So, we're going to hear from Sylvain Charlebois, who is a Canadian professor and researcher of food distribution and policy at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he's kind of the person in the food and beverage industry that everyone goes after. So let's move over to the conversation I had with him. For students right now, what would you say is the one change or trend that they should be paying attention to when it comes to the future?
Well, there's lots going on. I think there's a shift in paradigm in terms of how we feed nations. And I kind of explained that during my keynote. Instead of thinking about capacity and calories, we need to start thinking about how we're feeding, the quality part. Because I think over the next generation, and grads need to think about the next generation, what's going to impact their careers is how we feed the world and the kind of food that we provide to people. That's certainly one thing. Second, it's how we connect. Social media is a big piece. We know that a lot of food products have actually had their TikTok moment,
like
that's
matcha,
for sure.
Oh my
celery,
gosh.
and
it's not
cucumbers.
Over yet.
Yeah, of course, exactly. And youth has a better handle of how powerful that is. I mean, the dominant players in the food industry right now, I would say, are hiring talents to understand that power, but they don't fully grasp it. I don't think they know that something is going on, but we need a younger generation, people with no bias and growing up with social media, to understand and utilize social media to actually make food a centerpiece of our economy. I'll give you just one example. Every time I go on stage in front of a food group, whether it's farming, processing, you can feel that the group is not fully connected with social media as much as, say, another group like in banking or pharmaceuticals. They're very much engaged with social media communities, not food. We need young minds and young bright minds to make food more palatable and accessible on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you see a lot of the marketing, quote unquote, for the end product, those matchas. You see the final drinks, but actually that processing, how it gets, I think that there's that disconnect between how it gets to someone's plate and like the jobs that are there available.
Lots of biases out there, and I no offense to boomers, and I'm an Xer personally, but I would say that a lot of people have actually grown up. They become adults without fully understanding and appreciating food systems, where food is coming from. I am a bit concerned about the younger generations because they're the ones using DoorDash and Uber Eats more.
Yes.
So food literacy is a big deal. And so the one message I would give to young grads is, focus on food literacy. The more people value food, the more they'll be willing to pay for it. And that's how we're going to be able to grow our food economy.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up the term food systems. And I think that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But to you, like, when you're saying everyone should get more aware of the food system, like, what aspects are you wanting to bring out with that message?
It includes everything. So when I think of both ends of the food continuum, I think not just about farm gate, processing, distribution, retail, food service. I think about policy. I think about geopolitics, water. I think about obviously all factors that can impact food, like climate change. It's just food systems is an open concept. I'm in food distribution policy, so my mind is all focused on systems. So some thinkers, and I see that with grads, some grads are very much focused on individuals, consumer trends, matcha, so they'll look at what's the next trend, gum flavored bagels or something. So people are very focused on individuals. Other grads are focused on organizations. So a company, the government, NGOs, the UN, whatever. And some thinkers are more focused on systems. So a system is basically someone who actually evaluates systems will look at all moving parts impacting the end game, which is what we eat, where we buy, what price, and so on and so forth. So I'm in that category. My hope with the younger generations, with the younger food grads, is to see more of them going into the workforce, because we have seen the last 30 years, especially in academia, researchers and science going in the individualistic direction, just focusing on the person, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we need more people understanding all moving parts of a system to better understand what cities need to do, like Brampton, for example, what governments need to do, and what companies need to do whenever we see a tenant in the White House doing all sorts of crazy things.
Yeah, for sure. And again, speaking towards the systems, because you say for students to come into the food grads to go into these places, but to me it sounds like, well, I have to go get a degree in food policy, but someone coming out of high school might not know where, like they're not open to that world. Like, how do you even get into that other side, that government side, the policy making change? Like, where's the path towards that if you want to make change in those places?
You're a food scientist, okay? You've actually gained the ability to learn, okay? Now, you are focused on the science of food, but you don't know this, but you've gained the ability to learn about policy. You don't have to go back to school. You just need to interact with people like myself, with other folks in this room, to understand policy. Some good policy, some not so good policy, right? I've actually seen many great food scientists doing great work in policy and even strategy in business as well, by the way. In my lab, I have a food scientist. She's actually out of Guelph, and our project is very much about strategy for businesses, and she is incredible. Never went to school, never went to business school. She doesn't need to, because she's as a food scientist, she's gained the ability to learn, and that's what's the most important thing is. You just have to keep an open mind. I'm 55 years old, so I've been at this for 25 years, and I'm learning every single day. So I spoke on stage for half an hour, so I said what I needed to say, but I mean, I could be wrong, and that's great. I could be right, and that's great. And I sat after my talk to listen to others who may have a different perspective, and that's great. And it was really fun, and time well spent to listen to other speakers as well.
So that was a really cool conversation for me. I mean, I have this, like, as I was saying with him, this parasocial relationship, because I'm always listening to his own podcast, the Food Professor podcast. So to actually have the opportunity to be on the other end of the mic interviewing him was very cool for me. And it was so many great points that he brought up. And he mentioned this in his keynote, but then in that clip that we heard, is just that there's this shift between before that a lot of the food industry was just so concerned about just feeding everybody, because of the growing population, and it still continues to grow. But we're starting to see this population shift where we might actually see like a cusp and it starts to go down. And, there's this shift to focusing on, let's make higher quality food. And I know that was there before, but it's really coming out more and more. And I think that's super exciting. And hearing Sylvain talk about it can almost be an asset to you, that just understanding the whole food system, like it's really cool.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't be a bigger proponent for the healthier, more quality food conversation. I think we went globally down a bad way, just in terms of convenience foods and highly processed foods, which you can't even half the time call it food. It's, what do they say, a food-like item, because it's so it's not real. And I think 100%, when you understand where your food is coming from, when you growing up in a smaller village, when I would visit the butcher, I saw the meat hanging. I got to see how it was cut up. It kind of freaked me out when I was younger because the butcher had lost most of his fingers and he used to like chase us around with his hands, missing fingers. He thought it was really funny. But you know, it was like you got to see where food was coming from, and you know, you walk to the greengrocers, you walk to the bakery, you know, you really got to see people in action making the food, and then you know, these fresh, high quality items. And I think we need to somehow return a little bit more to that. Food is medicine. There is a growing rate of disease and so many things that when you look deeper and do the research can be tied to food. And then you hear doctors saying, you know, we have zero, we have very, like pretty much zero nutrition education. You know, we learn about the human body, but we don't learn about nutrition, which I think is bizarre. You know, food is our fuel, you know, fuels every human. So I love that he's bringing that into the conversations that he's having, because as you said, he is the food guy in Canada. If anyone ever needs to talk about the food processing industry in Canada, he's the one called, you know, Global News, TV, you know, he's all over the place. And I love that he's having those discussions. And I 100% agree that it is the younger generation. I'm like him, I'm an Xer, you know, but I think the next generation are going to be the one to be the change that we need to see in the world, that care about these things and want to see better food on the shelves. And then also understand that doesn't come for free, and understands, you know, that we, you know, higher quality will equal a different price point, but demand that as well. You know, I think there's so much work to be done. I mean, it's essentially why we started FoodGrads. You know, because one of the mottos we had was to be the change. It starts at the grassroots level. So, you know, we got to bring these young people into the sector, into the industry, to make these changes and to care, to have socially conscious young people that care about our industry and want to learn and make those improvements. So you're one of those. You know, you're leading the charge on that. So
yeah, and I like that he was saying in such a positive light that like the new generation has the ability to make the change. And, you know, even though sometimes it can be a bad thing with the social media, it can also be a good thing that you can have a better pulse on what's going on. Because I think Adam Yee from That's a Food Job, he was saying about sometimes actually his best research comes from TikTok, because you can see not someone reporting about something related to food, like the ideas, but it's coming from the individuals themselves. So you can kind of see that entire ecosystem. But what I also thought was really cool that I hadn't thought about is the ability that you don't have to go into government and start off like, you know, you get out of high school and then you get into government, and then that's the way you make the change. You can work in the industry for a while, and then you can build up that knowledge, and then, you know, go into government, go into policy work. Like, I think that is another cool thing to think about how you could pivot your career.
yeah, well, yeah, and going back to the social media, I mean, I've got a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old. They, by and large, get their information from YouTube and TikTok. I mean, it's just a fact. Whether you like it or not, whether it's real information that they're reading, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But it's concerning, but it's a fact. So until companies and governments, industries recognize that, you know, we're in trouble. I did a presentation back in the summer at IFT talking about how to attract students and grads into the industry. And my number one point was to companies, if you want to attract people into your company and to the broader industry, you need to be on social media, and not just some companies think, well, I have a website, and that's good enough, check. You know, that's like,
no.
Everybody has a website. You need to be doing better. You need to be part of the conversation on social media, and you know, that gives you credibility in young people's eyes. So 100%, that's why we have invested so much time and effort into this amazing podcast, because you're having, and you can speak to it, but you're having genuine conversations with real people that are talking about why they love their job and why they love the industry. And they don't just talk about all the good stuff. It's not sort of fluff where it's like, this is amazing. It's more so, there's lots of work to be done and lots of improvements to be made, but I want to be part of that, whether it's nutrition, whether it's environmental issues or sustainability. It's an entry point for any of those issues you might care about. And you're having those conversations with all different people across North America.
I know. It was always, when I was in school, I always wished that more people, like these like workplaces, came to the school and actually just had people talk with us, because like if they didn't do that, there was podcasts were getting bigger, and there definitely was some, but there just wasn't as much information. And I do think maybe it can be good, it can be bad, but I think being in this information age right now, there is a lot of opportunity to connect with the consumer, connect with the student. Like, you don't have to anymore be in the same room to even have the call, and there's so much accessibility with it. And I think that as well, mentioning to what you said with the change, is that we think that in order to make a change, we have to start like this big movement in order to, or like start our own company. But sometimes it's about going into the companies and then making the change. Like, if you're going to call out a company to do something, well, you can go work in it and then start making those changes.
100%. And I think the issue with social media as well is the algorithm. So, whatever you are interested in, it you just see more of that. So you can end up in this silo, believing one thing and never getting the alternate opinion or information, which I think is super dangerous. It's good to see both sides of the coin so that you can then, as an individual, decide where you sit, decide what you think, not what you're just believing and that you're seeing all the time, and that, it must be this way because that's all I'm seeing. No, you're seeing it because that's your algorithms. You're not, you need to see the other side of the coin as well. And I think that's where this podcast, you might listen to somebody and not agree. As the host, you might sit there and think, I don't agree with what you're saying right now, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't have the conversation. I absolutely think that that's even more important. You may not always agree with something somebody says, but unless you're willing to hear their opinion and hear their point of view, how are you ever going to grow? Because you'll just sit there thinking, I know everything, I know the lot, I don't need to listen to the other side of
and it goes back to the term like literacy. It's about looking at different sources, and I believe in order to really succeed in the next coming years, especially with like the rise of AI generated content and what's real and what's not, I really believe that critically assessing, looking at different sources, seeing how different people speak about it, accepting that maybe with this body of knowledge, it was accepted in the truth, so to say, before, but now that we've learned more, it's not the truth, and being open to those changes, but also, like you said, looking at different sources. And I think it's so critical. And I think that is what I hear with a lot of employers, and I hear with a lot of like the guests on the podcast, is that continuous learning. It kind of goes hand in hand with it, is not just accepting what it is, but seeing ways to improve not only your knowledge base, but your skills as well.
Well, you've schooled me on terms of, this product is full of, and it can have a bad rap because of the way that the label looks. And to a non-scientist, it looks very full of chemicals. And you're like, well, Nicole, that actually means salt. I don't know.
No, but it is true. And I think it comes with the literacy. And even myself, when I see the news headlines, I'm like, it'll be saying like, this is bad. And I'm like, oh no, that's bad. And then my first reaction is, well, I got to avoid that. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I need to learn a little bit more. And it's sometimes it's hard to challenge your own beliefs sometimes. And honestly, I get it as well, like the amount of time that it takes to go out and research. But anyways, my point is that I know that a lot of employers are looking for people that can learn, who can think, and who can like take knowledge and convert it. But I'm actually going to segue that. I know that's maybe not the best place to segue, but I was able to talk to two other professionals who are actually, we talked about someone who's kind of an academic, we talked to someone who's in the city, but I want to share two conversations of people who are like the actual food professionals, the people that we're supporting in this industry, and they had some really cool career journeys. So the first person that we're going to listen to is Amisha, and she is the president and owner of the Food Quotient Inc. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about you. You know, the Brampton Food Summit, it's been a wonderful day today. How has the event been for you?
It has been amazing. So this is my second year attending the Food Summit. And last year, I remember it was at the Alderley, which was a very small space. And to see it expanded so much and exponentially is really heartwarming. So it's been a wonderful day so far.
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about you. Tell me about the company that you work for and share a little bit more.
Sure. My name is Amisha and I'm the owner of the Food Quotient. We are a meal delivery company where we supply fully cooked meals across the GTA, and we also do corporate catering.
Wonderful. And tell me, how did you get into this role? Like, was this something that you dreamed about doing? Is this something that you...
This was definitely not something I dreamed of doing. So I do have a bachelor's degree in foods and nutrition. But then I did my MBA in information systems management. And then from there, I went to work for a financial services company. And then from there, I went into banking. So I was in banking for 15 years. And while I was a branch manager at my last role, I was still helping small business customers grow and scale their business. And I come from a business family myself. So at one point, I said, I know there is more that I can give to my community. And so I quit my job. And I started the business.
Wow. You wanted a job with impact, it sounded like.
Absolutely.
So tell me, like, how did you find the courage to do this? Because jumping between industries, first of all, jumping between jobs within an industry can be very scary for a lot of people, let alone going from another industry to another one. Like, where did you find that courage to do that?
I think the courage was already there because I come from a business family. I've seen the ups and downs of business. So I think that's in my blood. The courage is there, but I knew it was just a very strong sense of knowing that there is more that I can do and there's more that I can give. And that was the reason why I just said, that's it. And I took the leap of faith and here we are 7 years later.
Wow. Well, good for you. It takes a lot to do that, especially, following your passion, trying to do something that really feels right with who you are as a person. I commend you for that. And I have to, though, think about the more practical side, I guess you could say, because, sometimes you might really want to do something, but your skills aren't quite there to get you. So how did you skill up, or how did you obtain the skills that you need to make that next change?
So I did have the educational background through my bachelor's degree in foods and nutrition. So I knew, I studied what I already knew, which was the healing power of food. And that was what I wanted to bring to the community here in North America. I'm from India. And so when I moved here, it was all about processed foods and meat, lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Meanwhile, during spring, we are so excited because we all want to grow our own vegetables. Somehow they don't land on our plates when we're eating out. And so I just really wanted to give people that feeling of eating healthy food that has not been made by them, but it is still delicious and it still retains its nutritive properties as well. But talking about the skills, so I am a big believer in research. I love reading a lot. I always challenge myself to do, I push myself to learn more. And so that has just kept on continuing, which I'm currently also doing at this point. I'm learning a new course. And it just, the how kind of fell into place, but I do have a few different organizations within Brampton to thank for that. One being the Brampton Entrepreneur Center that has been very instrumental in helping me develop my skills.
And looking into the future with the skills, what are you trying to learn right now, or how are you building for your next steps, I guess you could?
So right now I'm taking a course on early AI adoption and how AI can help me in my business. I know this morning Dr. Charlebois talked about how people are worried that AI is going to take away jobs, but it's really the humans that are making the decisions. So I'm the human who wants to make the decision of using AI to hopefully get more jobs to humans out.
Wonderful. And then the last question I just want to ask you is about pieces of advice. We're a student podcast. What piece of advice would you give to students that are looking to go into the food and beverage industry and grow it?
So please consider this as your career. This is not a revolving door. Unfortunately, I found that a lot of people within the industry think that it is a revolving door. It's just a way to, pay my bills for the short time. But this is a whole entire career. There's a lot more that is available out there within the industry. So keep at it and ask for help. There's a lot of avenues that you can develop, and I'm here if you want to speak with me, but just keep at it.
I'm Kiran Mann. I'm CEO for Braars. We are located in Mississauga and Brampton, and our products are nationally available all across the mainstream retailers and grocery stores.
Well, you did a wonderful talk today earlier. I know that you were on the panel discussion speaking about the industry. So tell me about like your food job. What does that actually entail? Because that could mean many different things. So for our student audience, what do you do?
What do I do? I think I just enjoy my day. How's that?
Okay.
I love what I do. That is because I've always picked something where I can add value and I can have a good day. So that's the start of it. The technical side, I would say I'm CEO for Braars, OIC Foods, Happy Dairy, that's our brands. And we produce in 3 categories: dairy, sweets, and snacks. So we're a South Asian company that is selling our products nationally and now in some areas, some states of US. We have paneer, if you're aware of that, high protein vegetarian. We're a vegetarian company. So our motto is vegetarian done better. Our products are we avoid all kind of additives, and we make cleaner products for our consumers and our customers. And our motto is to ensure we can bring the grandma's recipes in reality and in commercialized way.
And tell me, how did you get into working for Braars? Like, was that something that you have been involved in for a long time? Was it something that you kind of fell into? Like, walk us through a little bit of the key steps to how you got here.
I would say, keeping in mind the audience that you said is going to hear how I landed in Braars, but how I've evolved in different industries and different spaces, is I've always kept an open mind and utilize the skills that I have today to build something tomorrow, and the new doors open every time. The formula has always worked. So I would say, from starting being a student to all the way now, is what can I do today at my best, where I can add value and feel good and enjoy it, but tomorrow I can learn something out of it, and probably a next door is going to open for me. I would say, how did I get to Braars? I worked in automotive for years, and then I opened my consulting and advisory firm, and Braars was one of my client, and what they, in a way, technically they still are. And I ended up also taking over as a CEO and run the whole operation, other than advising.
Wow. And thinking about students that are, going into the industry, do you have any pieces of advice that you think that they should know?
I would say, first start with, what do you think you're good at? You need to identify every single human being, every person, every student is something that they're really, really good at, and they're the only one that can do it in this whole wide world. So identify what that is, and does it make you feel good? Are you going to enjoy it doing it on Monday morning, or are you going to shrug your shoulders that you have to go to work? The moment you find that, don't overthink. I think sometimes we overthink about things, and we look for perfectionist moments. We don't need to. Just go with the flow, do what is coming in front of you, and then it will just take you to other doors and other opportunities in life.
So those were 2 powerhouses of female professionals. You can tell just the way that they speak. And it's interesting that they both didn't, like, they're powerhouses now, but then at the same time, they didn't stay within the food industry or even start in, or, in the first case of Amisha, she did start, but then left and then came back. So it goes to show that this industry is also accepting of other industries. Now, I can't speak on behalf of like the automobile industry or the banking industry, so I don't know how easy it is to transition between them. But I think it goes to show that, they're coming back to it. They're seasoned career professionals, but yet here they are coming back to the food industry, and it's kind of like that food is medicine you said earlier. It's like wanting to feed people, and you're not like everyone needs food, not everyone needs an automobile. So I think that goes to show that this industry, it's, you know, you don't need to have a plan, but having a plan also helps, but also that there's all different types of people with all different types of experiences, which I think is where we come, you know, coming back to the podcast, talking about what you do and probably why you stuck into recruiting within this industry is that, you know, it's a great place to grow.
Mm-hmm. I mean, two powerhouse, and I just, everybody's story is just so fascinating to me. Like it doesn't really matter who it is, just hearing everyone's got a unique story to share. And I agree. I think, you know, perhaps they're in banking or in auto, you know, a different industry, auto industry, and they're probably thinking, you know, I get to a certain point or something happens in life, and it's a case of, is this bringing meaning to my life? Like, is this something I feel strongly about? Is this something I can build legacy or feel proud about? And I think that's why people end up back in this space, is to exactly your point. It's nurturing, it's feeding people, it's a meaningful place to carve out a career. So when they're at that crossroads, perhaps, or your first guest said about you know, calling and feeling passionate, I think all those feelings bubble up, and then food calls you. And you know, if you are fortunate enough to have the means to do it, or just the determination alone. I mean, as I'm listening, I'm thinking this is wonderful advice to students and grads, but it's also really, really good advice to anybody at any point in their career, you know, to listen to that gut feeling, that intuition that's saying you can do more, you can be more, you can bring more to the world. You know, why ignore that voice? Why not act on it? Because what do you have to lose? And there's, you know, two really, really great examples of listening to that inner voice and then acting on it and doing something really meaningful, bringing healthy food, you know, those vegetarian options, because I couldn't agree more. There was this big move towards meat, and you know, especially with, again, we talk about social media, everything's about protein, getting your protein. Everyone assumes that's going to come through meat. The younger generation certainly do. You got to have meat to every meal. So where's the other opinion? Where's that other voice saying, no, you know, this is healthy too, and you should be eating these foods as well. So amazing conversations. I think, you know,
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I love hearing as well, both of them talking about being open, just like that openness. And I think it's easy when you're first in your career, which you would think would be the opposite of getting very set on a certain type of job. Like I hear a lot of students want to become product developers, and that's great. I think that it's a great job and there's so much interest, but I think that maybe it's that lack of exposure to the different types of jobs. Like maybe you like the that research aspect from the R&D, you know, developing a new product, but maybe you can actually get that from being a technical sales manager and trying to find out a technical sales account manager for an ingredient company and finding solutions there. And it's being open to, you know, don't just set yourself on one path or like one job more specifically, like look at it as a whole. And maybe I've heard this as well, like maybe you just don't like the meat industry. Maybe it's the plant-based meats industry that you really like, or it's the confectionery, or it's the dairy. Like there's like, it's good to know what you like, but don't close yourself off to what you don't even know is possible.
Well said. Exactly that. And don't think that you have to have it all figured out immediately. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. Be open-minded, listen to that gut feeling, that, you know, that intuition. I think don't ignore that. It can often whisper, but it can often speak really loudly, and opportunities come into your life. Don't say no to them. They probably came in because that's the path you were meant to be on, and the universe has a plan, and, you know, I go in a woo-woo direction, but I really believe in that because it happened to me in my own career. So I think sometimes you might think this is where you need to be, but these opportunities keep coming in a different area. Why do they keep coming up? Why not explore that? Because they keep coming up for a reason. And then 5 years later, you're looking back saying, well, now it all makes sense. Now it just, I didn't know it at the time, but now I get the benefit of hindsight. I can say, yeah, no, that was exactly the path that took me to that step. And then that opportunity took me to that. And even if you're in that moment where you're thinking, this isn't where I want to be, it might just be the stepping stone to the person you're going to meet, or the organization you're going to join. I think there really is a a plan for everybody. So I think my biggest advice has always been to students, just don't panic, don't worry, take the first step, have a little bit of a plan, maybe 2 or 3 years out. It's like what the guests were saying, you don't have to see the finish line, just have a little bit of a plan, and then the rest will just unfold.
Yeah. And the industry is constantly changing. Jobs that didn't exist 5 years ago now exist. Social media, like there wasn't a social media manager like 10 years ago. Maybe there was, maybe 10 years ago, but there wasn't the same type of job. No. And it goes to show that the industry is shifting. And I think that is another great segue to our last conversation that I'm going to bring up, is just the from AGI. We have Paul from AGI, and how automation is shifting the industry. And it's not just necessarily, all the jobs are going to be gone. It's a shifting in the different needs of that. So it was also a good connection to the agri-food piece. So let's show up the last clip of Paul. And
my name is Paul, and I'm a sales manager for the food division at AGI. AGI is a Canadian company, and we specialize in consulting, engineering design, manufacturing, processing equipment, and installation for the food and beverage industry.
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about your role. Like, sales can mean there's technical sales, there's more general sales, there's specific sales. Tell me a little bit more about your role.
Yeah. Honestly speaking, to sum it up, it's just me having adult conversations with people in the industry, trying to learn a little bit more about what they do and their challenges. And a lot of clients we have are struggling with manual processes, or they have identified that there's opportunity for energy savings. So that's where we come in. We've helped solve those by providing automation equipment to help them reduce that manual type of work at their site. Or when we think about energy savings, we look at how we can redirect waste and reuse that energy somewhere else, like preheating water for host stations, for example.
So tell me a little bit more about how you got into this role, because I think a lot of people might think about going into sales in different industries. And if they're not in, like, growing up in agriculture, it might not even be, or food, they're not really aware that it exists. So tell me, like, how did you get into this role?
Yeah. So being with the company for 13 years, I actually started as a project manager. So I did that for a decade. And really, that was my first boots on the ground after graduating from school, and learning a lot about the industry, but also what we've learned in school too, putting the theory in textbooks back now to reality, and doing projects from processing to packaging, installations. It was a good fit for me to transition to sales, because I enjoyed the talking to customers aspect, meeting new people, learning what they do, but also to really help them with their solutions. Because at the end of the day, I did sort of sales stuff before, but not really focused. And now it's just having those conversations and be able to interact, but also ultimately giving them a line of sight as to how we can solve their problems, and with their capital investments that they require to do at their plant side.
Yeah. And I actually wanted to talk a little bit more about AGI itself, because one thing that I found interesting is that I thought it was just primarily focused on agriculture. And I mean, it's funny, we want to talk about collaboration was something that was spoken about today, and we're supposed to be collaborating with industries, and sometimes even egg and food can sometimes have difficulties, which is so strange when egg is food, and it's confusing. So tell me a little bit more about AGI, because you go the whole spectrum.
Yeah. So AGI, it started in 1996, and they started acquiring companies, mainly started out in farm. So we are separated into 5 divisions. So feed, seed, farm, digital, and now food. Me representing food, I look after our customers that are in pet food or human food consumption. So anything that is produced at a manufacturing facility, by the time it makes it to someone to consume it, is the sector I deal with. But we also, when we think about farming and seeding, we also look after the material handling of these products to get from the trucks to bins at the farms, be able to transport them to the farmland, but also to transfer back onto the truck to be shipped out to their other customers. So we deal with, it's funny because you can think about it as farm to table, and we literally look at at the whole food from one spectrum all the way to the end, to the point we consume it as consumers.
And why do you think that there's a little bit of a disconnect between ag and food? Like, I find it a little bit strange. Like, I mean, me, I have my own opinions, but do you have any thoughts about why there might be a disconnect?
Oh, that's a good question. The disconnect, I would say, because even though we've grown up eating food all this time, we don't understand how it's made. And when we think about that, and you start learning about how it's made, you start to wonder, well, how did chocolate in this ice cream end up in my ice cream? Well, where did it come from? Came from the ingredient being batched at the factory level, but then you think about the cacao that it's getting farmed from the plants to kind of get there, right?
Yeah, I guess there is a bit of a lack of just education. I mean, we learn about the farmer, but sometimes I think when we speak about it, we speak, oh, they grew a tomato, and then the chef uses the tomato, and then it kind of misses all that in between. And then the last thing that I want to ask you before we go is just pieces of advice, because that's always something I always like to ask people that I speak with, is this people that are looking to go into the food and beverage industry or students. Do you have any pieces of advice you would give them to help grow their career?
Yeah, so a lot of advice that I give even my younger cousins that are just graduating, get to school, is, or when they're starting school, making sure that they do get into internships or core programs, because having the experience is very key. Because hiring engineers in the past from myself is that we do look for experience, and it's unfortunate if we are if there's a good candidate but they don't have the experience that you're looking for. It's harder to leverage anything to hire them, because at the end of the day we're at risk of accepting them and then being able to train them. Can they do it? But if they have a lot of credibility that we can see, then it gives us more of a peace of mind that this is a good candidate. Let's go ahead and go. So experience is key. That's probably my biggest advice. But then secondary, I think going into the food industry with an open mind, that there's a lot of ways, sectors, and roles, positions that you can break into. I don't think I would have imagined myself in sales. Coming from engineering background, we're usually pretty quiet and don't want to talk to people. But for me, I enjoy that now. It's very fun. And for me, it's just loving to learn from people, because as long as you continue to grow and learn, you will continue to develop professionally and personally.
Okay, so that was our last speaker that I interviewed at the show. And I think it also, we didn't even talk very much about it, was that the industry is shifting in terms of not only the people coming in, but the shift to automation. And you would think there's so much opportunity in the food industry. And this is also, like, I guess, another piece of advice of, if someone's looking to go in the food and beverage industry, maybe look at the agricultural industry. We've been talking about that, but there's a lot of support industries. There's a lot of people that support the food industry. And it's weird when I say food and I'm acting like the agricultural side is a whole different one, when they're really interconnected. So I think that Paul really did a good job at explaining that, they need support, the food industry. You need automation. Things are changing. And Nicole, I'll let you take it away, because my chain of thought is I'm not sure where it's going.
I think that exactly that the industry's changing, automation, AI, all these technical innovations, as well as people are changing. Humans are being educated on AI, the need to be aware that it's coming in, it's a factor, you can't ignore it. So I think with those two, it's like a perfect storm of people wanting different things, but the industry needing different things. And it's that big, messy, how do we figure that out? Food is never going away. I think the number one thing I would say to any young person listening is, if you're going to carve out a career and you want it to be around and AI is worrying you, then you should absolutely look at the food and beverage manufacturing space and agriculture as a place to carve out a career. And to your point, it is all one. It's the whole food system, farm to fork, but it's often looked at in two different spaces. But it's not going away. Even when AI is more prevalent in our everyday jobs, which it will be. I think, you have to admit that is happening. It's coming down the pipe. But we're always going to need to eat. And I also think that the food industry is one that, because it's quite tactile for a number of reasons, that lots of jobs will change in lots of different industries. But I think food, you can rely on the fact that humans will still very much be a part of it, the sensory piece, the human element. I mean, even the way that businesses are set up, 90% or more hire under 100 people. So they're very human centric, employee centric, and it's not massive teams. So there's not the financial side of it that they can come in and suddenly, reduce headcount and bring in all this big machinery and equipment and information technology and automation. It's not going to happen overnight. So I think, it's definitely going to be something that happens really slowly in the food space. Again, that's just my opinion. But I think we're all often last. Food and beverages often last to the game, even as we're talking about social media. Like Sylvain mentioned, other industries, tech, banking, automation, all these other industries have kind of been on the forefront of social media for a long time. And I feel like we're still telling companies, you need to be there. So but I don't want to say we're old fashioned. Maybe food is old fashioned though. It's one of the things that we've needed right from beginning of time. So we just have to own it and know that, and take the benefits from that, as opposed to looking at it as a negative. And I think one of the benefits will be slower to come to that. I think we will need people that are interested in AI or are AI curious. I know that term's been floating around. I have companies that I recruit for that definitely want people that are interested in learning AI and how to do their job or jobs in the space more efficiently, quicker. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, use the tools that you have in your tool belt, but I don't think it will replace people anytime soon.
And I think it's important to understand the term AI. I always like to talk about it like it's the same way of thinking about the internet. Like, I use the internet. Well, there's so many different ways to use the internet. And I think, going to these events, understanding what the real pain points are, what is actually AI? Like, so much of us are exposed to it through the use of like ChatGPT with large language models. But, what about using AI for optical or for food sensory, or using it for, a production line where the apples are coming through and it uses optics to figure out which one is good and which one is bad. And, that sounds a lot less scary than just saying like artificial intelligence. So I think that there's definitely merit to, actually understanding not what is being talked about, but in the sense, what's behind that black box. We use AI a lot. We talk about automation, but I think being someone who can understand the different types, I think that will be also very important as well. Like,
yeah, and not to look at it as a negative. If it means that our food safety, if it means less recalls and issues with allergens or something that could make somebody sick, that's a good thing. I mean, it's not a negative. It's an absolutely amazing thing. I mean, it's progress. So we need to embrace things that are better for us as a society. I absolutely think that, but I still think there'll be a person overseeing all of that. We're still going to need that human element, but if there's less human error, because right now there are a lot of hands-on labor elements in the food industry. So and those jobs, a lot of those jobs people don't really want half the time. I mean, they're jobs that, you know, they're very repetitive and people don't necessarily want those, and they're hard to fill because people move on. But yet food safety is so important. It's literally can save lives. So so yeah, I think again it's how you view it. To your point, you know, it's a big thing. So don't be nervous, don't feel defeated. Be curious and learn how your interest in it and your skill set can fit, and how you can make yourself, like, build your own brand, if you will, that you know, that's a way to look at it, so that you're useful and skilled and qualified to fit into these different food companies.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, is the figuring out how you can be useful for a company, like figure out what your skill set is, figure out what makes you unique, be open to the next like job opportunity. You know, you're always going to be growing, and maybe what worked now isn't working there, but just like, it's good to remind yourself, like, you have a lot of value as a student, you know, you have these new ideas, you can always, there's a lot more opportunity, for example, you to move around the country. Just like figure out what makes you unique and where you can go with it, and everyone has something that's unique about them. And I think that, you know, the next generation, you know, I don't know if I guess I'm a part of it, maybe I'm not, I don't know anymore. There's a lot of opportunity to change, and obviously with the Brampton Food Summit, it overall shows that the industry is looking to change, it is looking to innovate, and with all these different people in the room. And I think overall, like, I'm so happy we went to the event. There's a lot of food. That was one good thing about food events. That's very random. If you go to the food event with the food industry, you're gonna get food, which is always fun.
We got home with so much too. There was lots of leftovers, so that was awesome.
I know. I felt like I was at a little bit of a wedding myself.
Yeah.
You know, when you bring home all the food at the end of the wedding. But overall, it was a really great event, and I know that I'll play the clip, but I know that they're planning on doing another event for next year, so hopefully we get to attend. But I always say, like, you know, students, if you see these opportunities, try to go, even if you're like really nervous. Even if you talk to one person, it's always great. So, you know, coming to the end of this like montage clip, Nicole, do you have any, I guess, if you could summarize everything to someone who's listening for like what we talked about today, do you have any pieces of advice? Yeah, you know what? Let's do it at that. Like, do you have any final comments and pieces of advice for after Brampton Food Summit?
I would say, reiterate what you just said. If you have the opportunity to attend the Brampton Food Summit next year, to attend any food industry event, whether it's Food and Beverage Ontario's conference, any of these events, you will meet so many great people that, I can't remember who said it, maybe it was you at the beginning, ask questions, you know, everyone's willing to help. They're willing to, you know, you had some peripheral speakers that unfortunately some of them weren't able, literally through timing, to come and actually physically come and speak to you at the summit, but they wanted to. But they were, you know, their people were ushering them on, specifically the ministers, and you know, but they wanted to. They want to speak to students. Everybody wants to help and pay it forward. And I think that's, you know, one of the biggest takeaways for me is everyone has a different piece of advice that you can walk away with. So networking is huge, and you're right, it's scary sometimes certainly to go in person. But there's always friendly people there, and you can come and hide out, and then, you know, and then go out and specifically figure out who you want to speak with and go and approach them, and get involved with FoodGrads, because you can always meet people that way too, as a campus ambassador, and be more strategic in how you reach out to them, and benefit you, put things on your resume. But there's a little bit more support around that as well. So I would encourage that. But the summit was amazing. The food was unbelievable. Definitely needed to be longer, in my opinion. It's just a testament to it being such a good. It went fast. It was like that. And
oh my gosh, so fast.
Yeah. So just more of those. I mean, I think it's great to be around your people, and to talk to people in the industry and be a sponge. So that would be my final thought.
Wonderful. Well, I'll let you do the last piece of advice there, and I'll do a last little bit of a segue to it. So, if anyone is interested in learning more about Brampton or hear about any of the resources, I will have them in the show notes for anyone to listen to. Check out the FoodGrads website, and any of our socials, we'll be sure to share any more of these clips. But I do know that they're planning on doing another summit, so stay tuned for follow the city of Brampton. I know that they're always sharing all these opportunities for the food and beverage industry. And maybe it's not this event, but maybe it's through training. And as well, Careers Now, of course, is a great resource to find out, where they're going to be. Wonderful team. And yeah, I think overall, really great event. And thank you, Nicole, for tagging along with me, helping the event go well, and for this little post commentary. Hopefully, if people like this, we can do this again sometime, maybe get a student on another time. And yeah, thank you so much for sitting down with me, Nicole.
No problem. And maybe add in the show notes for any students and grads that are listening to create their student job seeker account at www.careersnow.ca, and you're going to get tons of resources and information there, as well as what you can access through FoodGrads. So definitely set up your free job seeker account through Careers Now.
Okay. Well, once again, thanks so much, Nicole. And thank you, of course, to the city of Brampton for having us there and letting us share this episode.